Hello and welcome. My name is Carlos and I'm the founder of Biassa. Today, my partner, Rafael, and we're continuing with our Fintech series. And we're bringing to you a new guest. His name is Bruno Diniz, and he's ahead of some very, very incredible initiatives in Brazil. The first thing that he's been doing, he's ahead of Inner Core Solutions, which is an advisory firm providing advisory for fintech companies willing to tap into Brazil or in Brazil. Bruno is also the responsible for the chapter of Next Bank in São Paulo. And Next Bank is an independent community seeking to drive change for the better in financial services through innovation, design, and entrepreneurship. Lastly, Bruno is ahead of the largest Fintech Summit that currently happens in São Paulo, and this year they're going for the second edition. So I would like to welcome you, sit back and relax, and welcome Bruno. Thank you.
Hi Bruno, thank you for participating. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, first of all, thank you guys for the opportunity, and it's always a pleasure to talk fintech with guys from Brazil and from the outside also. Well, let's talk a little bit more about me. I'm from Brazil. I have about 8 years of experience in the financial markets here, working for investment banks, and I entered in the fintech landscape here for about 2 years, and I've been studying a lot, reading a lot, and following all this fintech movement that is happening outside Brazil, and also they're starting to get here as well. So in fact, in late 2014, I started dealing with fintech apart from my job, because I worked in a financial institution, and I started mentoring for programs just like Startup Brazil, which is a government program for foster the startup ecosystem here in Brazil. And I was dealing with the fintech segment vertical. I mentored the startup there, sharing my knowledge of financial markets and things like that with them. After that, I realized that here in Brazil we got by that time a very tiny ecosystem. So I thought that would be a good thing to develop it here, and put together the players that are doing things into this space, the fintech space. So I thought about a way to do that. I start to research a little bit more about events and things like that, and I just saw that the job the Next Bank was doing all around the world, doing conferences and meetups about fintech, and they are a very open community. So I talked to the representatives there in Singapore, because they are based there, and then after I think 3 months, I started representing them here in Brazil. So it was the first step for something that no one else was doing here. Building events, starting small communities around the team here, and so that was the first part of the journey.
Perfect.
And after that, I made some events for Next Bank here, and I also started my own company, which is in our Inner Core Solution. It's an innovation company focused in bridging the gap between banks and in financial institutions in Brazil and the fintech companies. So it's a way to make them collaborate and bring new technologies and innovation to the financial system here in Brazil.
Fintechs are on the spotlight worldwide. How do you see the evolutions of fintechs in Brazil?
We've got a very peculiar banking scene here, because we got this, about 5 banks that dominate the scene here in retail banking. and they are starting to look about looking into the innovations that are happening in other places, just like London and places like that, and Hong Kong and in New York City. There are some major places where the fintech action happens. So these big institutions are starting to look at it at this and think, oh, okay, I got to position myself into this segment, and they are starting to raise the awareness as well, doing their own programs, just like Bradesco got its own program called Innova Bra, and Kubo, which is a co-working space sponsored by Itaú Bank here, one of the major banks, is also another way to position into this space. So part of this innovation and this initiatives are driven by these large institutions. So that's one way that fintech it was good to really raise the awareness when you see these companies step into this field. But it's not the only thing. We got here in Brazil some real needs when you talk about financial inclusion, and also about payments and stuff like that. So by now you see all around the world it's a good timing for starting companies like this. So here in Brazil we start to see many entrepreneurs that are looking at who have experience in financial markets. They're starting business in this segment now. So I think it's something that's trending all over the world, and now it's getting here in a way that the entrepreneurs can see this opportunity, and also there is capital flowing, because as many venture capitalists are looking at this right now, and it's another important component for that. And as well as I told you, there are some market solutions that they compare. They can make a parallel in London and in other places abroad. So it's a good way when you see banks like Atom Bank, and they really inspire people to do things similar things here in Brazil. So, and companies like Lendico and Lending Club, it's not from Brazil, and it's a peer-to-peer lending marketplace. So it's important because people now here in Brazil can see that we have these disruptive models all around the world. So let's try to do something similar here. But of course we got some constraints when you talk about legislation, things like that, and we really have to adapt some solutions in this way.
How do regulatory agencies are keeping up with the growth of fintechs in Brazil? Are they keeping up with the pace and contributing to make the sector a bit less bureaucratic?
Yeah, yeah, good to mention that you mentioned that, but because in one of our events here in Brazil, the Fintech Summit that we did in early November here in Brazil, we had a panel about that, a panel about regulation, things like that. One of the guys that were there was a lawyer from Pinheiro Neto, which was one of the biggest law firms here in Brazil, and they are helping many fintech companies from abroad to set their business here, and also companies here in Brazil to adapt their business to the current legislation, things like that. So I think one of the major problems here, because first you try to innovate, and so I think it's all around the world, and then you try to adapt your innovation to the current law. One example that we have here in Brazil, it's Brota, which is equity crowdfunding marketplace, and you can invest in startups through their website, and they started doing this they started when there was no legislation here about this thing. They worked very closely with CVM, which is like the SEC here, the Security Exchange here in Brazil. It was it was not a fast thing to do, and now they're established. They started using an instrument like convertible bonds to to the investors, like an instrument for the investors to invest in the companies.
Yep.
And now the CVM started our SEC here, starting to create our own legislation about this thing. So first you try to innovate, then when they realize that you got they made a business here around the sector. For sure, they started this business with the permission of the CVM and things like that. But now they are starting to get more involved around this and start to make their own legislation about this thing. So we got examples in many fintech subsegments here in Brazil. But I think this one is a very good case to mention.
Bruno, let's talk a little bit about trends. Before we launched our report on the rise of fintechs in Brazil, we came across a study that was also published in a major vehicle in Brazil, talking about how the millennials see the new products and financial products. And millennials, they don't have any adherence with how financial products are sold today. Do you think in the future we're still going to have banks? Could you give your inputs on this question, please?
Well, nowadays we see that we got this movement. It's like the unbundling of banking. You see that many services that banks used to offer, now you can hire other companies to do that. So there's an interesting chart by CB Insights that you can see this picture. It's like a Wells Fargo picture of their internet banking. Yeah. And you see in all the services that they offer, you can do with other banks. So the future without banks, I think it's gonna happen in the long run, but in the short term, we gonna see these banks collaborating with these companies. I think the good thing that the fintech offered to the world is that you don't have to do things only with the banks. Mm-hmm. You can use other services to substitute some things that you used to do in the banks. And why you go to the other services? Because sometimes they got a better customer experience than the banks offer. So and they are very specialized in one thing. So for some banks in the lending space, for example, you're just another guy, and when you see this alternatives in the fintech scene, you see, okay, I can make a lending cheaper with this alternative than my current bank, and for then I'm just not another customer. I'm an important customer. So that's the shift that happened with all the solutions there are getting here by fintech. So
now let's talk about the Fintech Summit event in São Paulo. Could you tell us a little bit about the event and some of the results achieved?
I think one of the first fintech events, the event focused only on fintech, was São Paulo Fintech Summit in Brazil. So there are other events like SIAB, which is an event sponsored by Febraban, which is an association of banks here in Brazil, but not quite like this, focused on new business and new business models. So it was very good. We did this event in Cubo, at Cubo, which is a innovation space from Bank Itaú. Itaú Bank sponsored this place, and So it was very good to see the reaction of the people. Some of them were not that aware about what fintech is. So that's I think this is the first frontier that we just achieved. This is very good to see that. And Next Bank already do some major conference and events all over the world. The last one that we had this year was Fintech Finals, an event at Hong Kong, and it was very good to see how the Asian community is working right now. And Next Bank also got their fintech events here since 2013 in places like Mexico City and Bogota. And now I think it's time to bring a major event, Latin event here in Brazil. We're gonna make our other edition, 2016 edition, in early November. I don't have the specific date yet, but it's gonna be in early November. And the things that we're trying to do here, and I am doing particularly, is trying to show São Paulo as the fintech hub for Latin America. Yeah. I think we got all the conditions here to do that. Because when you see there are so many branches from banks from outside here, they are based here in Brazil. It's a fast-paced city. São Paulo is a fast-paced city, and I really hope that we can do a really major event aiming all Latin American and also being a global event for fintech.
Well, I think there is a huge concentration of payment methods in Brazil, but regarding other subsectors within fintech, where do you see opportunities? What did you hear on the summit? Can you comment some insights with us?
Insurance space, we got a lot of opportunities here in Brazil also. There are some good initiatives in the robo-advisory segment here, like Varios and Magnetis, which are the two main companies that are paving the way here in the segments. There's already some good initiatives in the financial management, PFM, personal financial management sector, like Guia Bolso, which is it was one of the top downloaded apps from Apple Store here in Brazil. So it's surpassing even banks apps here in Brazil. So it's important to notice that. Mm-hmm. But I think one segment that it's not that developed here is InsurTech, solutions in insurance and the insurance landscape. Mm-hmm. And also there are some good solutions coming here dealing with cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and also things like that. Bitcoin specifically among the cryptocurrencies. The last event we did here in Brazil dealt about cryptocurrencies and blockchain. So we got one of the first companies focused on blockchain solutions here, which is called Original My. Original My is a company that certifies your document into the blockchain. So that it's a very interesting solution. But we got just one Original My here in Brazil. We need more companies dealing with this technology, with the blockchain technology, and also dealing with cryptocurrencies and things like that. So I would say InsurTech, I would say Bitcoin, things like that. Let me see. We also have some opportunities in the big data space and analytics as well. Focus on finance. I think it's a good subsector as well.
So, what challenges Brazilian banks experience to bring the customer to the center of discussion and offer a true mobile experience to them?
Here in Brazil, we got Nubank. It's not a bank yet. I think someday they can become a bank. They are really focused on good customer experience, and they are they just excel on that. But you got Banco Original, which is another bank here in Brazil. They were they are not new, they are new into the retail space. So they launched this initiative, this digital bank of their own. But they are also an investment bank here. So, and it's good to see that banks like this are looking at these trends outside Brazil and doing their own move here. There are some major players in Brazil like Bradesco and Itaú. They got a huge legacy, so it's not that easy to change to a digital bank, as fast as these other banks like original. They were born as a digital bank. So I think there is plenty of space for other initiatives in this space. In Brazil, we got many banks, not only the big ones, but now we see we got the small banks as well, that they don't need to have branches, because the bottleneck here for their growth or to step into the retail segment was, they didn't have any branches, any physical branches. So now we don't need this anymore. So they can be much focused on a specific segment, like a bank focused on students, a bank focused on high net worth individuals, who are also very into tech and things like that. So now we can see these smaller banks step into the scene thanks to the fintech advent. So that's the good thing. There is plenty of space as well for turning this smaller banks into the digital world, and also to see banks from outside to step into the scene here. But in Brazil, as I told you, it's not that easy. You need a banking license, which is not that easy to get. But some banks here are really looking at this opportunity right now.
Perfect.
It would be great to hear about other Brazilian fintechs expanding internationally to other regions in Latin America. What do you think of that?
But in solutions just like Biassa, as you mentioned, they are a good example of companies that can do that faster than a lending marketplace solution or things like that. So I talked to Thiago Alvarez, which is the CEO of Biassa, in the last event, in the last Fintech Summit here in Brazil, São Paulo Fintech Summit. And he told us that they really expect to make Biassa the best solution for Latin America. So they are aiming to expand to other countries, and I think their solution is appropriate for such moves. So in other subspaces in the fintech scene, I think it's kind of hard to have like this, like a lending marketplace that operates in many countries. You get Lendico as an example. They are really we got Lendico in many different countries, but as I told you, not all solutions will work like this. But Biassa is a good example of a company that is aiming to do that, and they got all the conditions to do that.
Bruno, can you tell us when is the next summit and what should we expect from that?
It's gonna be in November. It's gonna be a major event. But next here I also do some smaller events here in Brazil. Each 2 months I do some kind of interaction into this ecosystem. So we do like talks. The names of these talks are Fintech talks. We always talk about a different kind of subject. The first one we did at Biassa last year was Fintech Talks, first edition, number 1, and we dealt with investments, insurance. Let me see the other one, in lending. There's 3 segments: so investment, lending, and insurance. So we got the CEOs from these companies in talks, about 50 minutes. it was very good. So the last one we did, he was at Oxygenio Accelerator, which is accelerator from Porto Seguro Group, a major player in the insurance field here in Brazil. And we talked about blockchain and Bitcoin. So every other 2 months, each 2 months we have these events here.
Okay.
And we got this major event in November, which really it's aimed to be a global, a really global event, bringing people from outside as well.
Any final comments?
I'm really focused on fostering this segment here in Brazil, and and one of the main things that I'm trying to do with Next Bank and also with my company Intercar Solutions, which is a advisory company for this segment, because Next Bank is more focused on community building and to connect companies here into a bigger network, and my company is more than working close with the banks and financial institutions. Mm-hmm. So the thing that I'm trying to do, especially with Next Bank, is try to bring some other financial institutions to this game here in Brazil. So for example, in the Startup Weekend Fintech that we are organizing with a team of other fintech companies, we just brought into this game XP Investments, which is XP Investimentos here in Brazil. So they are sponsoring the Startup Weekend Fintech.
Okay.
And also Bovespa, which is the Brazilian stock exchange. So then both they were not into this field yet, but now they are making their move through the events and things like that. So it's good to see many other financial institutions step into this game here. So we are really focused on raising the awareness of fintech here. So as I told you, we brought the first edition of Fintech Talks was at Waira, which is the Telefonica Group Accelerator. The second was the summit, which was at Kubo, which is Itaú Space. And the last one, the last Fintech Talks was at Oxygenio, which is an accelerator by Porto Seguro. So it's good to see other banks and financial institutions step into the scene. That's one of the main goals here, is to really raise awareness. And it's another good opportunity for the entrepreneurs, because they can have these companies as their clients somehow, or even a partner. And that's the thing. So they got to realize that we got this opportunity, and they can start to partner up with all these companies, these new companies.
Bruno, thank you very much. Thank you very much for dedicating your time, sharing your knowledge with our audience. And to our audience, thank you very much also for dedicating your time and listening to Bruno and watching our channel. We'll be back soon with more quality content. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye.